Representative Saccone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to provide some context to this faulty piece of legislation. House Bill 2060 is purported to be a domestic abuse bill, and I'm sure proponents will say anyone opposed to this bill is opposed to helping victims of domestic abuse. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everyone I know wants to help domestic abuse victims. This bill is merely a gun control bill disguised as protecting domestic abuse victims. Gun control advocates, I know they're going to threaten to label any opponents of this as anti-domestic abuse victims. That's what they try to do, and intimidate people. But like any other gun control bill that I've ever argued against, this bill solves few, if any, of the problems it purports to solve, while it infringes on the rights of law-abiding citizens. This bill, as written, has scores of flaws in it, and I'm going to attempt to point out just a few of them. The good news is we can fix every one of these flaws. We can fix them. They're not insurmountable. And that's what I'm really going to propose after I outline to you some of the flaws today. First of all, this bill is an unfunded mandate on our law enforcement, sheriffs, and state police. Although they do accept weapons now, they're not equipped to accept the number of increase in weapons that they're going to be forced to accept. And the sheriffs that we've talked to don't want this bill. They don't want to build new facilities. They don't want to have to maintain control of these weapons. And by the way, Title 18 and Title 23 requires that sheriffs and law enforcement that accept these weapons have to maintain control and maintain the status of those weapons as the time that they receive them. And they're responsible to make the person whole if something happens to those weapons while they're in their care. They don't want that kind of responsibility. A good example is a recent case in Cambria County, where a man who had a temporary PFA issued against him had a collection of 306 guns that were taken from him. And the sheriff spent hours upon hours documenting and cataloging those weapons, and thousands of dollars in man hours expended. And the judge turned around, and when the judge heard it, he threw it out and said, return the weapons to him. This is not a legitimate case. And all those hours, man hours, and cataloging and so forth were wasted by the sheriff's department, and that was a cost, an unfunded mandate on them. Second, this bill limits who a citizen may relinquish his weapons to. It eliminates the ability to give them to a family or friend, family member or friend. Now, I want to point out that the current law is very strict on this matter. If you're ordered to relinquish your weapons and you relinquish it to any member, they have to sign a form. I have that form here if anyone cares to see it. And on that form, you acknowledge that if you violate the terms of that form, in other words, if you give that weapon back, it's a misdemeanor 1. That's 5 years in prison, up to $10,000 fine, and you automatically lose the right to have weapons for the rest of your life. Very stiff penalty. And we only have one case, and I don't want to even call it one, I'll call it a half a case, in the last 10 years of anybody ever violating that's actually signed that form. It's a very strict penalty. But we're eliminating that. We're not allowing you to relinquish it to friends who will sign that form and keep it in good care. We're going to push it all on the law enforcement who don't want that mandate. Third, this bill includes other weapons, which is undefined in the bill. That's a problem. This could include kitchen knives, swords, anything, things in your workshop, sharp objects in your workshop, because believe me, If a person wants to do you harm, even though you've taken his guns, he can go home and get a knife or any other weapon from his tool shop. I have an awl in my workshop that's very, very sharp, can do just as much damage to you as a gun. And 3 times the number of murders committed in this state by knives and swords than by rifles. This would include, they'd have to confiscate all the knives and implements in your house. And it also includes ammunition, which is not a weapon. They'd have to catalog. I have friends who have 20,000 rounds of ammunition in their house. They're going to catalog and store all these things. It's ridiculous. And believe me, this doesn't solve the problem, because you know what? Law enforcement doesn't know how many guns anyone has. They don't know how many guns I have. They may know how many handguns I have if they look at the sales purchase receipts. But I would submit they don't even know that. But they certainly don't know how many long guns I have. So anybody that's ordered to relinquish their weapons, I can give them 35 long guns and all the handguns, and I could still have 10 back at home or hidden somewhere, that if I'm determined to hurt you, I can use those weapons to hurt you. This bill will not prevent that. Next, the abandoned property clause is a real problem. It's a constitutional problem. If after a year they can't see to make all the efforts to find you, or if you've moved away, now the sheriffs can sell your property. No, they can't. The Constitution doesn't give the authority to law enforcement to take your property and sell it and make money from it. This needs to be fixed in the bill. Then there's the 24-hour requirement. It's not adequate for people to comply. PFAs are routinely issued at the end of a day, which makes it more difficult for you to get legal help and other assistance if you really wanted to comply with this order. Originally, it was 72 hours. The compromise was 48 hours. Now in this bill, it's 24 hours. It's unreasonable. Next, it creates a problem with picks and nicks. You want the PFAs, temporary PFAs and final PFAs, to be included in the picks and nicks system so that a person can't go out and buy a weapon, buy a new weapon, even after he's relinquished the old weapons. Both picks and nicks require what's called unique identifiers to be properly input into the system. This bill, many court orders don't have those unique identifiers on them. Thousands actually can't be put into the system because they don't contain those unique identifiers. Senate Bill 501 required those unique identifiers. That's why, one of the reasons why it's a superior bill. This bill removed that requirement from the reporting system. Another major flaw that we can fix. Look, this bill, like all gun control bills, concentrates on the instrument and not the person. It tries to prevent the accused from obtaining a weapon, but does nothing to control the actual person who may be out of control himself. That's where the focus should be, on the person, not the instrument. There's no other crime out there where the person automatically loses his rights to his weapons. Even assault, even if you go downtown and you get in a bar fight and beat someone up and threaten to do some more, you're not automatically ordered to relinquish all your weapons. There's no other crime where you're automatically ordered to relinquish your weapons. These are just a few of the myriad of problems with this bill. Again, they can all be fixed. This is not a time for demagoguery and playing on the emotions of people. I know people want us to do something about domestic abuse. This isn't it. It's time for thoughtful discussion of real solutions that protect the rights of victims of domestic abuse, as well as protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens. This bill is more advocacy than resolution. This bill actually turns gun owners into victims by creating unintentional violations of the law. We should not try to help one victim by creating another. With a nod to a famous conservative that I know, I say this: standing firm on the defense of our rights is no vice, and compromise in the defense of our liberty is no virtue. We're a deliberative body. We need to deliberate on this bill. People say we need to do the right thing. We need to do the right thing. I heard that a lot yesterday. Yeah, we do. The right thing is to rework this bill and find that balance that actually protects victims of domestic abuse while protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens. Now, I've outlined for you many fixable flaws in this bill. Many. There's more. It's not too late to fix them. As I've said many times on this floor, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. We can fix this. I ask you to remove the politics from this process. Vote no and continue working on an effective solution that actually helps victims of domestic abuse while protecting our individual rights. It's our constitutional responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.